right. Hello, hello. We're live. Let's get started. I already got PHP Storm running here, so let's talk a little bit about what we're going to do in this stream. I've found yet another boundary case for issuing a Workbench license for subscribers to a Shifty plan. So I think part one, if you will, of this stream a couple weeks ago was emailing people out to renew their license. And then part two was the case where subscribers should receive this license when they sign up. And then part three, this part, is going to be where they basically, if you can swap a plan. I thought of another area where it's like, okay, well, if you, let's say, upgrade, or in this case, downgrade from the LTS plan to the latest plans, as we've seen, include a license to the Workbench. So if you change that, you should get that plan, or you should get the license for that plan. So let's kind of write this out. Hey Haas, hey JT, how's it going? Thanks for joining me live. So let's get a little to-do going here. I think last time I was maybe a tiny bit scattered. So let's kind of try to write this out a little bit. So so basically when user swaps plans, issue new Workbench license. Now, there's some caveats to this. So let me kind of work through the caveats, and then we're going to try to drive all these out with some tests, and we'll see how they go. So, hey Ryan, how's it going? Okay, so when a user swaps a plan, issue a new Workbench license. So kind of first of all, only if they do not have an active one for subscription. All right, and then also, I think more important than that would be only for latest, unlimited, and everything plan. Okay, and then I think there's probably one more bit here where I'm just trying to think through this. If you swap your plan, I think it gives you, because the billing cycles are different between the LTS plan, you would swap your plan and then your new end date would be the new license end date. So I think I think that part of it is okay, but I'm just going to make a little note here, verify that ends at matches subscription ends at. What I'm thinking here is that if somehow, I think this would be covered by some of the other tests, but let's just say you were already on an annual plan and then you swapped to a different annual plan that somehow didn't include the license, your subscription end date is not going to change. You're just going to kind of get grandfathered into that plan. So we kind of have to think about that. I'm just going to put in parentheses here, grandfathering. So this is what I can think of off the top of my head. It's probably really simple to swap the plan. We'll find where this is in code. But these are kind of at least the three test cases that I would probably want to check for, right? I guess you could argue that there's 5 test cases because there's these 3 plus 2 additional plans that I would want to test for. So that's something you always want to try to do. And this is an area that I don't think a lot of people talk about when it comes to testing. Testing really gives you a different hat, so to speak. Like it really makes you think about your code in different ways. So testing isn't just valuable from, oh, I know my code's doing what I want it to do. It's also valuable because it really makes you think through these kinds of features. And even if you're doing something quick and not writing tests, I think the mindset of that is really valuable, right? It makes you a better developer to think of these things, whether it's a planning meeting or a pointing meeting, or if you're doing freelance work. It really makes you think of all these different things that go into this. And as we've seen from these streams that it didn't really plan on being multiple parts, even the tiniest feature has a lot of steps, a lot of little things that can go into it. So anyway, let's kind of see how swapping a plan works now. I think there's a central piece in the code. I'm going to start there and we'll kind of backtrack where it goes. But then I want to go to testing. I want to drive these out with tests today. Haas, off topic. Did Jess finish up browser shot thing for Shift homepage. Yeah, yeah. Real quick before we get in the code, I'll show you what he's talking about there. So a while back, Jess had a stream where basically we worked together, but I think she live streamed generating these automatically, these little merge screenshots here. So if we go look at like run a shift and we go to all these different learn more pages, I'll just open a few of them here. But each one of these has a fun little screenshot that, you know, if you go to kind of different resolutions, you can see this. Previously, I was taking all these by hand, but now that Shift is, you know, dozens and dozens of different pieces of automation, you know, that was getting a little bit weird, and some of the really old shifts were like the old GitHub UI. So basically what we did was Jess recrafted this with Tailwind, and then I built it into CI to basically use Browser Shot, which I think is a SPACI package that can take a screenshot of one of your like blade templates. So now these get generated automatically for us, and they're in like a CI artifact on GitHub whenever we push changes to that repo. So again, Jess has a stream. I'll link it in the notes after this one's over. But you can see here that all of these are nice. So if GitHub ever changes their thing, we just go in, touch up one little layout template, or tweak the CSS, and I can just regenerate all these. Or if I add some new automation that I want to highlight in one of these commits. You know, so that's pretty cool. So anyways, that's what Haas was asking about. So, all right, let's get to it here. Okay, so let's go see where a user swaps a plan. So I'm going to go to subscription controller because I know that this is kind of the central piece for all this. So it's going to be in store, or well, it's not going to be in store. We've already kind of handled store. Resume. Destroy. I think only Shifty plans have this ability. So, because you can really only create a subscription, and we've already covered that in part 2 of these streams to make sure to generate that. What we need to do now, I think, is check this. I think in here somewhere there's like a swap. Yeah, swap plan. Here we go. So what I want to do, the subscription helper has swap plan. I don't think I would want to put it down in the subscription helper, but let's just see, does anywhere else in the code call this like subscription helper swap plan? So the subscription helper itself has it, and then the subscription helper test, of course, has it. So because this is the only place calling it, I felt pretty confident that this is the place where we could put this, on top of which we already have the context that this is going to be a Shifty plan. So what we can do is basically add this to, we could probably add it here, and again, I would probably just throw it in here in a little private method at first, and we'll kind of see where it lands after the fact. Maybe I make it an event like subscription changed. I don't know yet, but let's drive it out, and then as we saw again in part 2, it's very easy to kind of refactor that code and push it somewhere else if we want to make it event driven for some reason. So let's start here, and let's just get into this test. It already exists. Let's start driving out those tests, get the code flowing, and then we can figure out, again, a better place to put it. That's just the way I like to work. You know, it keeps me from getting caught up in the details of like variable names and do I want to do some pattern and all this, you know, Yagni crap. Like, let's just get the code going. We can always refactor later, right? And then we'd be armed with the tests. So again, that's just the way I like to do it. Why not Vim today? I don't use Vim. You're thinking of Jess, I think. I think you think of Jess. All right, so plan, account controller, test. Let's just minimize these. They're taking up so much space. So somewhere in here, we probably have like a swap. Yes, we do. So let's just kind of take a look at these. Quantity, update, subscription, and redirect. Okay. Quantity so quantity is not what we want. I think we want update. Yeah, update swaps plan and redirects. Update resets quantity for unlimited plan. Nice. Update determines quantity for unlimited plan. All right. Okay, so we definitely have some tests for this. So let's make a new one. Only sometimes Atom. Yeah, that's right. Sometimes I'll, in a pinch, fire up. I will fire up Vim. I don't use it a lot on these streams, I guess is what I'm saying. And I do fire up Atom for like... it's really funny. I tend to use Atom on like my static sites where like I don't need PHP Storm or whatever. Like if I'm just working on like a Jigsaw site, like my blog or something, or the Shifty Bits blog, like I will just fire up Vim or Atom on that. So, but if I'm doing Laravel, I go to PHP Storm. So let's say update update issues. Let's say update issues Workbench license when, and I think it's probably just easier to just say when included with plan. All right. So let's drive this out now. So everything else should be the same. We probably don't really want to mess with quantity, in fairness. So let's just kind of get rid of that. We have tests that do that. So I like to make the test focused on what we're after here, right? So let's kind of see how all this works. So again, we're not going to mess with quantity. All right, we pulled that out. Laravel matchers is model. Expect swap plan with quantity. I would imagine that's just the plan quantity. Yeah, just one. I don't think we mess with it anywhere else. Oh, sorry, that's resets. Quantity. We're always messing with quantity. What does the subscription actually do in the factory? I mean, I would imagine it just does one. Let's just go make sure though. Subscription factory quantity 1. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so this should always just be 1, basically. Okay, so we're gonna have a plan, in this case, the latest plan. We make a team, that's all part of the factory. We make a team repository with that team for some reason. So we probably don't need to make both, but let's just hold on to that for a second. We could probably do this in like a cleaner factory way, but again, let's mess with that later. Subscription factory create. Okay, we create one for the team user. That makes sense. And we create, they have a LTS unlimited plan. So they're going to be going from LTS to latest, which is good. That's what we want. Let's just keep this LTS for convenience or simplicity. Okay, so then we're going to expect swap plan to be called. And then it's going to be called with the subscription, with the plan, and then quantity of 1. That makes sense. And then subscription helper, we swap it out. So we're basically, that subscription helper is a real-time facade. It basically allows us to swap the plan and kind of go from there. All right. So then we call Shifty plan for the team, account update, new plan. And then they should end up getting redirected. Okay, so obviously this is going to work. It doesn't have any new code, so this should really just be a repeat of that very first test that we have. But what we're going to do is drive this out to make sure that a license got created for the subscription. So let's fire up Docker, run this test, see that it's passing. Again, it should be. And then let's start adding our customizations to kind of get this first test knocked out. All right. Greetings, Jose. How's it going? Portugal. You hanging out with Kaneko over there? I know he's over there. Is Nuno in Portugal too, or is he France? I forget. I think he's Portugal. He always talks about Portugal, like, or at least the meetups and so forth. I don't know. I'm not sure. All right, let's go deck lamp. As my iMac takes off. Just thinking about it. And let's borrow, sorry for the back and forth here, let's borrow this just to filter those out. And if Docker starts, we will, should be started. Oh, it's starting. So we'll run this test as soon as Docker wants to fire up. The benefits of live streaming. Cool, yeah. It's thinking about it. Come on, Docker. Get those containers on top of your whale ship. So close. Stack them up. There we go. Vendor bin PHP unit filter equals that. All right, so again, I would hope that this would just pass. And it does. Good. Okay, so that was expected. We expected this to pass because we didn't really change any code. It's just swapping the plan. It's not messing with quantities. So it's really just a repeat of the test that exists. So now what we would want to do is, in this specific scenario, we would want to make sure that we basically issue a new Workbench license. So I'm going to work a little bit backwards here to see kind of what needs to be set up. So it's kind of one of those things where sometimes when I'm copying a test, again, it's a little bit cheating because I'm not writing it from scratch per se. But when I do that, this is a little trick. I actually work backwards and it forces me to better understand like the test setup that I need. So by working backwards, what I mean is I make the assertions, then I go back and update the act, and then I go back and update kind of the arrange step. So let's kind of put that into action here. So what I would do is I would probably go in and make sure that a license has been issued for that subscriber, right? And probably even that a mail was sent. But let's start with the license bit. So what we can do is say license equals license, excuse me, where user ID is the same as the subscription user ID. And we'll get those. And we can just say, you know, licenses. And we'll say this assert, what am I after here? We could do assert count licenses count, I guess. Can you do just that? Or the haystack, it's backwards. It is an iterable. I think eloquent collections are just iterable, so you should be able to do something like that, I think. In which case we would say license equals licenses first. And again, you could use something like sol or whatever else up here to kind of like throw an exception if that wasn't the only one in the database. I'm kind of old school. I still kind of write this get and then I assert that there's just one. That's all doing the same thing, but the difference being that instead of getting like an exception that happens in when my tests run, I would get a failed assertion, and I think that's just a little bit cleaner. In the context of testing, in the application, like I would totally write sol. But in the context of a test, I like seeing failed assertions, not necessarily exceptions being thrown. You get the weird stack trace and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, plus I need this license because we're going to test some other things like that. So, all right, we're going to do this assert equals, so the expected would be 0 license total, and then this assert true, and we would want to say something like subscription ends at equals, I think. Is it is equal? Is it is equal to or equals? I always forget. Is equal to, maybe? License ends at. So we just want to make sure that they're the same. And I think that's probably all that's really important right now. We could go so far as to say something like, license email is null. And these are all pieces of when it creates a license for a subscriber, these are just kind of little nuances about it. Like they're not paying for it, so the total's 0. We mentioned in our kind of to-do list that we definitely would want to make sure that the subscription and the license end dates match because it's part of their subscription. And then again, just a little nuance that it's being assigned to a user and therefore it's not like a guest account, meaning that the email is not set. So these are all just things that I would want to make sure in the code that kind of tag it as a subscriber license. Okay, we also said that we would want to send a mail, so we would say mail assert sent, and in this case, I think it's like a license renewal or license renewal. There we go. It might not even be a license renewal. If you're swapping plans, this would be a new license. It's actually not a license. What do we have here? Let's go see what we have here. Mail, license key. Yeah, there it is. Okay. So license key. There we go. That's what you're getting. You're not getting a renewal. You're getting a brand new, you're getting a new car. You're getting a brand new license. And here we could just say something like mail has to license notification, or well, it's really just license user email would be what that is. There's probably more like mail. There's probably like and mail license is the license that we pulled out. So just a little model assertion there. That's getting a bit long. Let's clean this up. There we go. Just that way we can see it as my tiny screen goes here. Okay, so these are the assertions that I care about. So again, in the spirit of working backwards, we got mail assert and we've asserted that the license. So again, we're going to make sure that a license exists in the database. It has all the properties that we would expect for one being assigned to a subscription. And then of course we would want to make sure that that subscriber got an email saying that, hey, here's your license key for your subscription. So there it is, all good. So now back to the kind of arrange step. There's nothing different that we would need to do here. We're just passing that in there. But what I would need to do is, since we're making mail assertions, let's mail fake it. And then we would also need to, I don't think we need to do anything for the license because again, it's kind of made out of thin air, right? So let's run this again. And we of course should see failures now. And again, instead of seeing an exception from Sol, we should get a legit failure saying, hey, look, count's not 1, right? So failed asserting that actual size 0 matches expected size 1. So good stuff. That's what we expect. Just for giggles, let's compare. Maybe the Sol exception isn't that bad. Let's just see here. Let's see what this looks like. No query results for model app license. App models license. Model not found exception. It's not, again, it's not as clean, but is failed asserting that actual size 0 matches expected size 1 communicate that much more? Like, no. But again, that exception doesn't also necessarily give me a whole lot either. So anyway, just a little quick comparison there. Okay, let's go back to our code. Okay. Do you have mail faked somewhere in that test? Had to look away for a minute. Mail fake right here? Is that what you're talking about? Maybe you missed that. That should be all we need. Okay, so we're going to swap the plan. Provided everything worked with swapping of a plan, here is where we would want to issue them a new license. So in this case, we would say something like license equals license. I think we have a create. I think I have some kind of like create with method on the model. Let's import this and see what happens. Create for user, maybe? What is this? User email transaction ID. What else do we have? Do we have expires? We do have expires. Okay, so create for user is probably the way to go. So let's create for user. We would say subscription user, and then there is no transaction ID, there is no email, but we would probably set the expires at equal to subscription ends at. There we go. I wonder if this gets a little funky. Oh, whoops, team subscription, I guess. Team subscription ends at. Okay. I'm just thinking out loud here a second. We can go ahead. I think our test will pass, but now I'm thinking, does swap plan immediately update? Like, is it synchronous? Does it immediately update their plan? I'm going to assume that it is. I don't think that they would fire any webhooks or anything necessarily. Yeah. We're probably okay there. Here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that if you swap a plan and you get invoiced, based on part 2 of these live streams, if you swap a plan and you get invoiced, what does that webhook that comes back when you pay the invoice look like? Because I just wouldn't want to be in a scenario where I double generated a license for them. I just wonder if this is somehow handled by that billing cycle. I'd have to go check the webhooks. I think this is still the right place to put this particular code. But what I may need to do after the fact is if somehow that webhook is a similar webhook as when you update your plan or when you renew your plan, then I would probably just have to put some checks in there that again say like, oh, do you already have an active Workbench license? If you do, then don't generate a new one. Which again, that code all might be in there, but I'm just kind of thinking this through for a second. All right, so we have the license, and then now we would do mail to, and then license notification email, and then send a new license key mail with license, I believe. Is that what we take? Yep, license, and then is it a renewal? No. What's the difference between license key and license renewal? It's interesting. Oh, I think I forgot to delete that mail from the last stream. So this bool, so we'll just say false. There we go. Okay, so we missed a parameter there for license key. So let's fix that. So we would expect, where were we in our fancy assertion here? So we would say has to mail license is that, and mail renewal is, whoops, not tilde, is not. All right, cool. And I think that's what we named it. Yeah, renewal. All right, cool. All right, so now this test should pass if we're lucky. Let's see. Oh no. Object of class mail user could not be converted to int. All right, so it looks like I have like a bad assertion here. Object of class model user could not be converted to int. All right, did I type something wrong here? Mail license is license. Which line are they griping about? Controller, line 69, notification, email. Line 69, to license, notification, email. What's wrong with you? Oh, it takes user ID. Whoops. There we go. So really, we could just fake this with this. It's all the same, but let's keep it clean. All right, let's try that again. I thought it was in the mail assertion, but it's actually in Okay, called a member function. Okay, yeah, I thought that was wrong. Let's go check. Carbon PHP is equal. I think I've messed this up last time. I thought it was like is equal to, but, or is it equals? Equal to. It's not equals, it's not is equal to, it's equal to. Equal to. All right, let's try that again. Oh, it's actually on null. Whoops. So we have two problems. Not only is the method wrong, but so is ends at. Why would ends at be empty? Oh. They haven't necessarily expired it. That's a good catch. Okay, so ends at, if you've worked with Cashier before, a subscription ends at is only set if you have canceled your plan. Otherwise, it's kind of infinite. Not infinite, but it would be determined on the billing date, which is something that Cashier doesn't necessarily track. Again, that's why we use those webhooks. So, given that, that's interesting. I think I'm gonna have to double check that off stream. I think for now, let's just do carbon set test now to now. We'll say now equals carbon create. Let's just say 2022 6 22. Let's do yesterday. That's fun. And we'll do 12 34 56. All right. And so down here, I would expect subscription. So it's not subscription ends at. I would expect true that now add year is equal to license in yet. Or well, let's flip that around. Let's say license ends at is equal to now add year. So license ends at. Again, I'll probably need to tweak this off stream, but let's chop that out and see if we get a little farther along. Yeah, Lee, I think that's what we're gonna do. Okay, so we passed. Okay, so yeah, so just to kind of back up a second, ideally this would be based on ends at if it existed, right? And we can write a different test for that if we want. But I'm gonna need to check those webhooks because I think, again, if you watched part 2 or you joined me live, we saw that in the webhooks you get back, the billing cycle and when that period for that billing cycle ends. And so we were able to use that date directly for the license expiration. But in this case, you already have a plan, you're swapping it, and your billing date may or may not get changed, kind of depending on a lot of factors. So I really do want to keep this the way it was based on the subscription, but I can't just use ends at because they might not have canceled their subscription yet. So I'll need to kind of check what that looks like. But I think for now, let's kind of leave this alone. Let's keep going, but I'm gonna add. I kind of have the verify anyway. Matches ends at like if exists or something. I think it's not really grandfathering. It's more like if it exists. And then one last thing I want to do, does the webhook for invoice.paid fire for plan swaps. So I need to check those probably off stream because it'll take a little digging around in Stripe events and kind of analyzing some recent swaps to see what that kind of looks like. So let's finish these two though, because I feel like I feel like those are going to happen no matter what. So let's just assume that this is good, which it is good, but it kind of gives you a subscription. Worst case scenario, like your license lasts longer than your subscription. You know what? That's okay with me for right now. I think it's a step in the right direction. So let's copy this one more time. Or well, actually first, before we copy this, let's change this plan. Plan is Stripe ID for latest. All right, so what I want to do is get a little variance in my tests. And so what we can do is do array random. I could use a data provider, but sometimes when it's just one little thing like this, I just trust that I run enough CI and so forth. You know, it runs locally when I'm testing it. It runs on GitHub Actions. Anytime I push something, like eventually I'll get the variance that this matters. So I'm not going to worry about like testing it with a data provider. So latest unlimited, and then plan ID. Whoops, my chat is in the way. Plan Stripe plan ID for everything. All right, and so all we're really doing here is saying, I think you passed the array. Whoops, let's make that an array. Let's just go ahead and break this down so it's a little easier to see. There we go. Okay, so what I'm doing here is basically saying, look, if it's the latest plan or latest unlimited or everything, which are all those plans we mentioned here, then that's what this test is going to handle. It's basically going to say, look, if you're coming from some other plan, like the LTS plan or whatever, that we're going to go ahead and issue you a license. So I think the next test, the next logical test would be if I'm coming from any one of those plans and going to a similar plan where I already have a license, then I wouldn't necessarily reissue you one. You're going to get one when you renew. So there's no reason to kind of bump that out, so to speak. You already have one. So let's copy this same test because we've already kind of written everything we need. And then let's kind of change that to work the same way, right? So we can do a random plan here, and we can also do kind of a random plan in here. And that's actually not the right test. We would still issue you a license somehow if you were here. I think what the better test is what we kind of wrote already, only if they do not have an active subscription. So I think what we need to do is not really this test per se. We could do a little bit of variance here, again, just for giggles. But what we're really trying to say is if you already have one of these plans, so we could do the same thing, but now what we want to do is let's get rid of carbon. We don't need that anymore. We could create you a license for your subscription. So let's do that. Let's say license equals license factory create, and you're going to be for user ID subscription user ID. So now we're making you a license. So let's change this. Update does not issue Workbench license when when one exists for plan. And that's actually a key part, when one exists for that plan. And we'll kind of see what I mean by that here in just a second. So what we can do is we can do this and we can assert that the account is still one, and then we could just say this assert true that licenses first is the license that we created. And then we can get rid of all this stuff, and instead we would say like assert nothing outgoing. We could actually be specific there. We could say assert not sent on that particular mailable, just in case there's other mail being sent. So let's stay specific here. All right. So let's recap this for a second, and then I'll try to run it. Okay, so basically what we're going to do is we're going to make one of the same plans, same thing, again, with the test variants. So again, more test variants here demonstrating that, hey, if you're going to any one of these other plans that should give you a license, you're not going to issue one because that license already exists. Now, one last thing I want to check is let's look at the license factory and see, do I have something special in here? Yeah, I do, for the user. Okay, so let's use this factory that kind of we already have, because this swaps it the other way. So we can say user, and here we would just pass that in. And then I think the last thing we would want to do is say total is 0 there. And this would kind of demonstrate that it is for the subscribed user and the total 0, and that should give us everything we need to kind of demonstrate that it's for that. Actually, you know what? It has. Let's just make another one of these. Let's say subscription. I'm starting to have like too much custom logic, so let's just make another one. Why not? This is always going to take in a user ID. So the user ID would be user ID, email's null, total is 0, not -0, and then transaction ID. There's just so many things. Given that all the things you would set for that, why not just use another state, right? That's pretty good. So let's just drop that in there, and we can get rid of all of this. We don't have to have like the specifics of what it means to be a license for a subscription. Okay, so create a license that's attached to a subscription. Here it is, and then create that. Everything else stays the same. We're still mail faking. Nothing else changes here about the plans and what you want to swap. And then now we're going to assert that for that particular user, there should only be one subscription. So assert counts 1, and then assert that the one you found is the license that we made ourselves in the factory earlier, and no email was sent. So I think this is a pretty strong test. Let's change our filter. I'm hearing some stuff in the chat, so I'll check that while we're waiting on this to run. What are people saying here? Would a data provider be a better option for variants? Yeah, I think I kind of addressed that. If I really wanted to make sure that all of those things, changed, then yeah, a data provider would be the way to go. But I trust that I'm going to get enough runs of these tests that it doesn't bother me to kind of check them individually. I think another gotcha that I remember, and sometimes why I do this kind of test variants, is when I'm dealing with cashier, there, as we saw in part 2, there's some stuff that happens underneath in all of the cashier code. And data providers are pretty static. They happen really early in the life cycle, so you don't have access to things like the configuration. So because that's a Stripe plan ID, let me just go back to the code. Because this pulls from a Stripe ID, right? There's actually some stuff happening underneath with Stripe, and a data provider is not going to have that like early enough on. So I'd have to build some kind of like bullshit translator and like all this stuff. It's just a lot of extra code is the point. I've run into that before in this particular case. If it were something really simple where I was testing like, again, primitive values 1, 2, 3, I probably would have made a data provider. But given that I'm not, and I'm not also that worried that I wouldn't get enough variance here, then, yeah, a data provider would give me more coverage. Is it a good pattern to use random selection in testing? If it fails in one particular case but not in others, seems like it would be difficult to troubleshoot where the problem is. Yeah, true. The data provider is going to give you, if it failed, it would give you, again, a very specific like key or key value or data set that it failed on. So that would be more important. So I'm not advocating using, I'm not advocating like doing array random very often. I would have written a data set. So again, my primary reason for using array random here is more about the fact that I'm dealing with Stripe, and because of that, there's some lifecycle issues. So pest datasets have access to booted Laravel applications. Yeah, man, I'm hearing you. Pest, 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 pest. Cool. All right, let's go back. Failed asserting that size 2 matches expected size 1. Yes, you're right about that. We knew that that was going to happen. So we're getting 2 license keys that are happening because, again, the license already exists. So let's just continue to put this code here. Again, I may refactor it once we see what it looks like. But what we can do now is we can say kind of the same thing we're doing in our test. We can say license equals license query. Let's just say where user ID is the same as this. And then let's just break these down a line because it's going to get pretty long. And we'll say where total is 0. Oh my gosh, that's like twice I've done -0. Where null transaction ID. I already don't like the amount of logic that's here, but let's just finish it out. Again, refactor later. So we could say exists, I think, and then basically if not exists or something, or has license. Let's just finish this out. It's feeling a little ugly. Why aren't you selecting the whole thing? There you go. Let's go in here. I'm not sure if I have like a scope active or not. Let's find out. Has active key. Here we go. That's not exactly what I want to do. I don't think I have, oh, scope paid. I don't know if I have like a scope active. That's okay. We can just write it. I actually wrote one of these before. I had something like where future. I was trying to get this in Laravel, I think a couple months ago, where you could do something like this, like where future and then ends at. But I think there were some nuances and some disagreements about like where it landed. So who knows? Maybe it'll get in there in Laravel 10. But yeah, I think we could say where date. Really, we don't even need where date. We just say where ends at is greater than now. That's really what we're after. And again, I might turn that into a scope. Let's just kind of descend these in Laravel style. Okay, so all we're really doing, if you look at it, is we're recreating. Uh-oh, did my? Oh no, okay, sorry. I thought my camera shut off. All we're really doing is recreating the same thing we just did in that license factory. And again, all this is very specific logic of what it means to be a license for a subscription. So I'm probably going to refactor this very similar into what we had just a minute ago. But again, let's get this passing because I think it's the last test we need to write for now. So let's see if this passes. Okay, good. So now what I want to do is let's run our whole test because I think we've covered what we cared about. We've kind of covered, let's just put little pluses here. We've covered this one and this one. I think these are both pretty good. Whoops. So we've got only for latest and everything planned. So we've demonstrated that with a little bit of our test variants. And then we say only if they don't have an active one for the subscription. So it has to match the subscription. And it can't be one that they purchased on their own, right? That doesn't count. They should get one for their subscription. And that's how we identify it, is saying, hey, look, if you have one that you didn't pay for, there's no transaction ID, there's nothing. I never gave away free subscriptions. So you know, that's the only way to kind of identify it. So I could make a reference to subscription ID if I feel like there's a bug or something in these, but I think for now, again, this all works. So let's copy this test case because I think some of our original tests are going to fail. Well, they might not fail, but I would want to tighten them up to make sure they're not doing anything they shouldn't be doing. Am I correct assuming that you can swap from any plan to any plan because of that random array you just explained? Yes. You can upgrade your plans, you can downgrade your plan. I mean, you can do anything you need to do with your plan, of course. And that's kind of the area that we're covering. And again, I need to do some research to make sure that for sometimes when you swapped your plan, for example, if you were currently running, you know, an LTS plan or a latest plan for 99 bucks and you upgraded to the everything plan, you're going to get billed immediately because that's a massive plan change. You're upgrading your plan. Because of that, again, an invoice is going to get issued and it's going to get marked as paid ideally because, you know, you have a credit card on file. And then that's going to trigger the webhook and kind of get us back into what I streamed on in part 2 where if it's a billing cycle, then that's going to issue another Workbench license. So I kind of need to check to see what that looks like. And again, that may be, if that issues something interesting like plan change, again, I may take this code that we wrote today, this piece, and just move that into a webhook. Again, like I said in the beginning, I don't know if this is the exact right place for the code. This is where we're going to put it now with the tests. And I can very easily move these tests and this code to the proper place. So I will check that off stream. But I think for now, we're going to assume that this is where the user takes action to change their plan to update it. And this is where we want it to be. Now, all of the tests passed for Shifty Plan Account Controller. I think we're probably just getting a little bit lucky. So let's just go back and look at some of these original update ones and let's kind of tighten them up a bit. And by tighten them up, I just want to make sure that they're not sending out you know, anything for a different plan. So in this scenario here, plan Stripe ID for latest, plan Stripe ID LTS. This actually is issuing a Workbench license underneath and sending an email, but it's not failing because we haven't done anything to demonstrate that in the test. So again, this is what I mean by tighten it up. So let's do mail fake, and down here let's just do the same thing. Mail assert not sent this license key email. And if I rerun these tests, I think we're going to see a failure now because that is the perfect setup for an LTS to a latest plan swap where they should issue that. So I think we're going to get a failure here, which is kind of why I wanted to go back and tweak these tests. So this is the last thing we'll do, and then I'll end the stream. So there's our failure. So unexpected license key sent. All right, cool. So what we can do here is we can really just make this easier in the fact that maybe let's just say something like they're going from, you know, LTS Unlimited to Stripe. Well, let's go from the LTS to Unlimited. There we go. And we can also say something like, I think you can say this dot assert database count. Is there like a database empty? No, I don't think so. That would be nice if you could say that. Instead of a count, you could just say something like assert empty or something. So what is it? Is it the license table? And then, okay, so tables, licenses. I think you could pass the model there and we'll just say 0. Be nice if, it might be an assertion I add later in the week, like assert database empty. And you could just, you know, do your thing. It's really just a synonym for this one, but anyway, or an alias, I guess. So we should be back to green, and I would want to do the same thing for this, right? So you're going from unlimited down to an LTS, so that's good. So let's borrow these two assertions. Assert database missing checks for a specific model, right? Because I think I wrote that one a long time ago. So I don't think that covers it. All right, what a break here. Test found either method. It did not like something I just did. Let's try that again. Assert database count, table licenses count 0. I'm not sure why I broke something here. They're going to go to the unlimited plan. Oh. We're kind of testing that quantity. Update determines quantity from unlimited plan. Yeah, I can't go... I think the way in which I'm swapping these is not going to work. So let's just do this. Let's go from latest to LTS. We're just going to reverse those two. I think that'll get me what I want to get. The problem is I'm going from LTS to an unlimited plan, and it's trying to tweak the quantities, and I don't want it to do that. So we're still getting 2 failures. Okay, failed asserting that table licenses matches entries of 0. Found 1. So it seems like it's still adding those. Oh, you know why? You know why it's still adding those? We never limited this in any other way. We're just doing it always. So it's a good thing I went back and made these strict. We actually need to wrap this whole thing to kind of make sure that it's not one of these other plans, right? So we kind of have to say here now, these other 2 tests are failing because it's actually generating a license for these people, for all of the plans. So we would have to say something like, we could just simply say something like not, I think plan has is, or if plan is latest, I think there is. Let's find out. I think I have like an is latest. Yeah, there we go. All right, cool. So if plan's latest or plan is everything, then we would do this. And now that we have all these crazy nested ifs, I would probably turn this into a simple little private method. But again, let's get back to getting our test passing. This is why you go back and make your test strong. See, everything was green, but I was giving everyone a license. I would have deployed that. So now we should be back to green, and I think there's one more test we'll need to adjust. Good. So everything's passing. We're not issuing stuff for the other types of plans. We are issuing for the plans that we would expect. I think one more test needs to be updated. If we go down here, update resets quantity. So here we're going from LTS unlimited to down to an LTS. So I think we can mail fake, and there's our assertions. Good. So this is the last one, is this one. And here we're going to a latest. Update determines quantity from unlimited plan. So here we'll just go down to an LTS plan. And we can do the same assertions and the same mail fake. And again, we should just pass. And I think that's the rest of the tests are the ones we added today, and we know that they work. So if this is green, I think we're in a good spot. I'll just need to do some refactoring, not only for the blob of nested code that I just wrote in the controller, which isn't really that many lines. I mean, it's 20-ish lines, not even. It's 11 lines, mostly curly braces. But I want to go and check Stripe to see how kind of the full life cycle plays out. We're thinking of upgrading very statically, like the user just is changing it in the UI. But there's actually a lot of asynchronous stuff that's happening, right? There's the invoice is getting paid, it's getting issued, it's firing off a webhook, that webhook's coming back and potentially generating another license key for them. So I just kind of want to look at it holistically and make sure that, you know, all of that is lining up well, because right now, theoretically, I could be generating them two license keys, and I wouldn't want to do that either. So, But I think this is pretty sound. This is the right place. This is one of the places that I would want to do it. I just need to make sure it's not happening again based on those webhook responses. So with that, I think this is good, provided that those webhook responses are what I think they are, meaning that they have a different type of event that's happening instead of a billing cycle happening. I think it's probably something like plan change or something along those lines. So I'll find out, and I may post on Twitter kind of the resolution to that. But I think this is good. I think next week I will try to start a fresh new set of things to stream on. Probably some Workbench tasks are what I'm thinking. Again, just in the general coding category that I think people voted on Twitter. So if you got anything you want to see, let me know on Twitter. Otherwise, thanks for joining live, and see everyone next time.